are doing amazing and fantastic and wonderful. Today, I'm here with one of my favorite authors and people of all time, Ellery Adams. And
Hi.
yes, and so I had posted about how I wanted to read Pride and Prejudice, and I don't read classics. I don't have like classics at all. And so I was like, I want to read Pride and Prejudice. And then she messaged me, she's like, we could buddy read Pride and Prejudice. I was like, what? That yes. And then we also decided to also do a retelling. So today's conversation is Pride and Prejudice and then Pride and Premeditation, which is sort of like a YA Jane Austen murder mystery type of series by Tirza Price. I think that's how you say her name, Tirza Price. So
I think that's right. I actually did one of those little YouTube pronunciation things because I hate it. I don't want to mess up authors' names when I'm mentioning them, but I'm pretty sure that was the correct pronunciation.
I'm like, I hope so. I always valued the fact that I was really good at telling my students' names apart. Like they would look at me and they go, you got it right. And I'm like, yes, so 5, I got it, kind of thing.
Well, names are important.
They are very, very important. And if you guys can tell, we decided to dress up.
Because why not? It's only completely sweltering. And let me tell you, if we were back in Regency Air, England, we would stank.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
These things are not breathable. And we're going to be like adjusting the entire video. So just prepare for that because I think every dress from that period must have been made for ladies with trim waists and not a lot going on up top. And we got some shelf action here that's different from that shelf action. So if we're constantly fixing things, just like you see undergarments, we're sorry to shock you.
Yes, I'm like trying to like tuck things in, and I'm like, okay, it's tucked in the strap. It might look a little awkward, but that's just what we're doing.
We've got our bonnets.
Yes, fantastic.
We've got our cameos.
Yes. So excited. I even have cameo earrings. These were Erin's grandmother's.
Oh, they're so beautiful.
And so I was like, oh, I can actually like have a real reason to wear a cameo, like other than like, oh, I just want to wear one today. It matches the aesthetic.
Exactly. And we might get a little obsessed with this whole thing and we might start showing up in dresses and just talking about books, but it just feels more authentic in our completely modern settings to be wearing these outfits because who doesn't want an empire waist, y'all, when you've spent the year eating whatever you want? They are very forgiving on the tummy.
They are very, very forgiving on the tummy, especially being like a new mom. I'm like, oh, look, it's all flowy down there. There's nothing like sticking to places.
I don't have that excuse. I have my deadline's coming up in 6 weeks and I'm not ready. And powering through this huge bag of Sour Patch Kids is really helping me again and again and again. So we're probably going to get photobombed by cats on both ends. Mine's getting ready to jump up right now.
Yes, Cleo will go in and out, as y'all know. She is the queen of the actual YouTube channel. There it is. I love it. I love it. Okay, so let's first talk about the original, the classic Pride and Prejudice. I didn't think that I was going to love it as much as I did because I was hardcore, like, I don't like classics. I'm not a fan of them. Whenever I was in school, they weren't fun. They weren't like,
they were the summer reading list. They were the things you had to write the essays about. And so a lot of people kind of have classic PTSD.
Yeah, very much so. And that's sort of how I felt. But then I was like, when I saw that there was Pride and Premeditation, and you guys know that how much I love mysteries and murder mysteries, I was like, well, I feel like I should know what the original is before I go and try and read a retelling of it to really like give myself the authentic experience.
That's a good call.
Yeah. And I'm going to say like, I loved this book. 5 stars. I started buying like Darcy shirts and like all this.
I need one of these.
Yes.
Talk Darcy to me, people.
Yes. And
I think that people who haven't read Pride and Prejudice can't quite understand the appeal of Mr. Darcy. And some people actually still hate him. And that is kind of a good place for us to launch, because
Yeah.
one of the first things that we interacted by saying in our buddy read was, is this the original friends, I mean, enemies to lovers trope? I mean, is this
Yeah.
the OG?
I think
Because
it
it's one
is.
of my favorite tropes, because how many times have we not judged a book correctly based on its cover? I mean, as far as people go, and books. And I mean, I've done it. I still do it. I don't want to do it, but I think it's part of human nature, is until we really get to know somebody, we don't. And this initial meeting between Elizabeth and Darcy is not a good one. I mean, he's basically talking smack about her behind
Mhm.
her back.
Yeah, and she's like just sitting behind a table behind him, and she's just listening in. Like he doesn't even know that she's hearing this part of the conversation, and he's just like, "Yeah, you got the beautiful sister," to Bingley, and he's like,
Right. And then
"Yeah."
it's, well, what about Lizzie? Well,
Mhm.
she's tolerable, and she's tolerable. And to him, he comes off as such a snob. Here's this room of country bumpkins. What am I doing here?
Mhm.
And,
Why'd you drag me here?
yeah, you're
Yeah.
supposed to dislike him immediately. And most of us do,
Oh yeah, no, I was like, at the beginning, I was like, why in the world are people naming their cats Darcy? Like I was sitting here and I was like, I don't get it. He seems like, a butt face, really. Like I just wanted to like flick him in the nose and be like, why are you the way you are? And I was like, there's no way I'm going to end up loving him. But Jane Austen, man, she can write some words. I
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
really, really, really loved, like, I don't know. I loved I loved the way that she wrote him and like the progression of him. I'm
Yeah. And Lizzie too. I mean, she's kind of defensive right away about lots of things. And I think that part of that's her youth, and part of that's her situation. I mean, she's getting so much pressure from her mom to get married. All of the girls are. I mean, even the youngest at 15, it's like, come on, get married. Of course, we'll see that that does not have good results in some cases when you
no.
pressure a girl that much. So,
Yeah, speaking of Mrs. Bennet, oh my goodness. I like, oh, I love how when we were talking about like questions for this, you were like drama queen, helicopter mom. And as a teacher, I know helicopter moms. I just
right.
do. And I was like, oh my God, yeah, she is a helicopter mom. She is that mom that is pushing her kids to do all of the things and in a fast and best way of everyone else. And
But what's the progression of that? Is it lawnmower mom, or they just bowl over people? Like, I
yeah,
think she might be a lawnmower mom. She's just, because she has no sense of propriety.
no
She,
filter
she
at
her
all.
manners are horrible.
Yeah. Yeah. And like the
She's
way
like
that,
that relative you have over for dinner, and you're like, I'm so glad we haven't gone out because somebody would see them.
yes, yes, she, yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I was just not a fan of her in both books. Like, I was like, can Mr. Bennett just be like a single dad?
Right,
Kind
right.
of like, I'm like, cause oh, hands down, one of my favorite characters of all. Like, he made me
Yeah.
laugh the most. Like, I was just,
He's got such great one-liners
oh
too.
my
I
gosh,
mean, the
yes.
thing is, he's kind of easy to love. Mrs. Bennett's harder to love. And then I think after this is probably my fifth or sixth reread, I've really grown to appreciate her situation more and more. And just, she's kind of also got that mama grizzly thing where she's like, if I don't see my daughters taken care of while I'm alive, they're either going to be destitute and, living off the charity of some relative, or, I don't know what's going to happen to them. They didn't have a lot of choices. They don't have money. They don't really have a high position in society. They don't have much to offer other than their looks and whatever accomplishments they have. And
Yeah.
as we've seen, their accomplishments are not always traditional. They don't all know how to play music, and they don't all know, they're not all good at embroidery. I mean, Lizzie is like my spirit character, because I can't sew anything, and the fact that she can't sew just makes me love her all the more. But, you know, you can almost picture her going to the instrument and starting to sing and just going, oh, that's not as good as some other young ladies.
Yeah.
You know, so you get Mrs. Bennet is terrified for the fate of her daughters, and that's definitely coming from love.
Yes.
And those of us who are moms know that we can act a little crazy if we feel like our children don't have a secure future. So as I've aged, I've come to appreciate her more. I still think she acts kind of out of control at points, but I'm so much more empathetic with her situation and all those daughters. And, you know, they're going to lose everything because of this stupid law of inheritance.
That law, like the feminism in me, like gets so mad at so many different things. And like, as a history major, I 100% understand where Mrs. Bennet is coming from and the position that she had to have to try and get her daughters in a safe marriage, but as like in a well-off one as much as she could. And because I feel like she was also, I don't know if she fell, the way that it's written, I don't know if she fell in love with Mr. Bennet.
Right.
I feel like she thought that she should have been in higher society than which she was given in her.
So could you imagine her at a high society function? I don't think she was really equipped for that. She's lucky she got Mr. Bennet, and Mr. Bennet knows how to deal with her. He just walks away to his own. He's got his Virginia Woolf room of one's own, as we should all have, and he just closes the door with his books, and there you have it. But it's funny that you mentioned the word safe, because that made me think that the most interesting characters in this book are the characters that kind of don't play it safe and aren't really, you know, what we would expect for societal norms. So like Jane and Bingley, who really should be our other romantic couple, the one that everyone else is supposed to aspire to, these well-behaved, genteel, kind, soft-hearted people with excellent manners and beauty. I find them kind of boring.
So boring. And it's also, I'm a big person on communication, and their whole entire downfall is lack of communication with each other. And I'm like, you're letting other people dictate, like, and tell you what someone else is doing and what someone else is feeling. And I'm like, just go and talk to Jane, Charles, like, or Jane, just go and talk to him.
But you want to shake him. Don't you want to shake him by you want to pull him by the cravat and be like, look here, buddy.
Yeah.
She's right there. You totally love her. Don't listen to Darcy. I mean, this is like the gossip.
Yes.
You know how gossip affects people. Austen is laying it out for us this early. Like, listen, people, if you are completely influenced by gossip, your life is going to be ruined. I mean, she tells us this, you know, hundreds of years ago. Gossip is no good, people. Yet it's so much fun in her books. Where would we be without somebody running in or Mrs. Bennet like coming all flustered to say like, oh, guess what I heard? Because I'm immediately like, what did you hear?
Yeah, because I want to know.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm on the edge of my seat going, oh, what did they say? Like, especially with like, I wanted to know what was going on between Darcy and Wickham. Like I wanted,
and what are you going to talk about at tea every day? If you don't have some juicy gossip, if somebody doesn't come to call, or if some relative hasn't misbehaved, what are you going to talk about? You can't talk about, you know, what flavor scone you've had for that long. Those scone. My pronunciation has been corrected by a friendly British person, so I'm probably still getting it wrong. Scone.
It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. I'm in Oklahoma, so it's scone. Like
it's scone. It's here scone. In North Carolina.
Sometimes I'll talk and I'm like, oh, there's my Oklahoman coming out. I'm sorry, y'all.
Right. Or it's just a biscuit here, because everything's a biscuit. Even though that's completely wrong, because over there, biscuit, cookie. I know, but I love it. I love like all just looking at words everywhere. It's so much fun, but
yes,
that'll get us way off track. But I would love one day if we just had some virtual tea together with people from all over, and all y'all can get your bonnets.
Yes. Fantastic.
We'd love to have you. We can all behave like Mrs. Bennet together.
Yes, be salacious and just,
we should have a Mrs. Bennet tea where we just stuff our faces and we're just like, oh, manners. The gloves don't work with my phone.
I can just see Lydia with a Instagram that is all about herself.
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
Yes. I hate to compare Lydia to a Kardashian, but just that whole, she would have 59 different selfie sticks and she would be a pro at filters. Not that there's anything wrong with that at all. I mean, social media is fun and filters are fun, but I think that and she's immature. She's just a kid. Every time I kind of want to blast her, and I do want to blast her a lot because she only cares about her own agenda, but she's a teenage girl.
That's what I had to keep reminding
myself. I was a horrible teenage girl. So Lydia's actually pretty realistic.
She's very, very realistic, especially like Jane and Lizzie are very, very mature for their ages, because if you look at 19, 20-year-olds now compared to then, it's vastly different. I mean, 19, 20-year-olds were already married or having kids or multiple kids at that point. And I mean, I didn't have Alex until I was 30. So it's easier for me to look at where Lydia is at because I taught middle school as well. So like
me too. So she reminds me of a lot of
that age range.
Right. And you can see your students kind of having crushes on people where you're like, oh, he's not going to be any good for you, or she's not going to be any good for you. But that's part of life experience, is making those bad choices and then figuring out who is good for you. Unfortunately, Lydia has to marry the guy. And that's so sad. I mean,
and it's all because of her, like, they wanted to make sure that her, what's the word that I'm looking for?
Well, like, I mean, they really need to protect her reputation here.
That's the word I'm looking for. Yes.
Right. And so if all of us and all of you guys listening to this now, if you think about your first crush, think about him or her, get that picture in your head. Oh my God. That's who your life partner is now. Nope. Is that a good thing? For me? Oh, heck no. And Lydia's stuck. This is not a situation she can ever get out of. And I got to tell you guys right now that a great book to read of kind of part 2 is P.D. James' Death Comes to Pemberley. And it's really about Wickham, and Lydia appears in it very often. And it shows the Darcys as a more mature couple with children, and they're a wonderful couple. And, we're so glad that they got together. But it also shows kind of the bed that Lydia made, and has to lie in is really a thorny, uncomfortable, lonely, unhappy one. And I feel so bad for her in retrospect because she's just a kid.
She was dealt now she might have dealt her own hand to herself.
Right. It doesn't mean I like her as a character, because I still kind of don't.
No, because she's at the end they talk about how she like begs money from Lizzie and like different things like that. And it makes my heart so like love Lizzie even more, that she still goes and takes care of Lydia by sending her money and things like that, even though she knows that she made her own bed. Right. But I mean,
Lizzie's family loyalty is one of my favorite things about her. I mean, wouldn't you love her as a sister? And Jane is a wonderful sister because she's super supportive and she's not pushy, but she is a wonderful listener. And I think that, Bingley is really lucky to have her, because I think she's always going to support him and be a great listener. I just hope she becomes a little bit more assertive after she gets married, and, puts those sisters in their places sometimes, and, grows into her own. But, when you're in a household with 6 other women, for including the mom, it's hard to kind of shine the way you want to shine. Voice-wise, everyone said how beautiful she was, and that was great. But what about her personality?
Exactly. I was just saying her personality, which is sweet, kind, and caring, and like one of those. She is automatically like I would consider like a great mom, because
she's gonna be a great mom.
She's gonna be a great mom. Like I just
and community member. Can't you see her just bringing baskets of food to people? And I can see her doing all kinds of charitable works and unlike Mary, I think Mary is one of those characters I just we were talking about characters that we feel like as female characters really just get pushed aside or described in a line or two in kind of a, well, that was enough said about them. And I'm kind of going, well, is it though? I mean, can you really sum up a woman or a young lady in a line? She thought she was good at music, but actually she wasn't. I mean,
and that scene was so mortifying whenever she like went to go and like start another song, and Mrs. Bennet's like, I think we're done.
Yeah, why don't you go fetch my reticule, Mary?
Yeah, and I'm like, no, poor, like I can jive with Mary because of like how much she loves reading and just like a lot of like
the introvert, right? And then she comes and tries to shine and they're like, oh, that's up. Stop shining, honey. Go back to your room,
Right? Like go hide behind your books again. Like it seems as though Mrs. Bennet isn't even trying to marry off her. Like she's like,
they've already given up on her. Like we might get you married off if your sisters make a good match, and then you'll be a charity project for somebody.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, okay, and how is it that Mr. Bennet and Mary don't have more of a bond when they're the two readers?
Exactly. I'm like, I would have thought that they would have, like, she would have been like reading along with him in there, or I don't know. I feel like maybe she would have had more of an opinion as well because of how well read she is. But she was sort of pushed off to the side, sort of like in Alexander Hamilton with Peggy, like, and Peggy. Like, I feel like that's very much like how Mary
and
was.
I think that's a really good example, because I think that Mary's a kind of moral compass, and sometimes you don't want the moral compass around because they're a reflection, and you're thinking, well, I'm not really behaving the way I should, and so I can't look at Mary right now because Mary's going to lecture me on what's proper. And maybe Mary's right more than we think. I can see why Mary and Mrs. Bennet wouldn't get along.
Yes. I could totally see why they wouldn't get along. I feel like Mary has more Mr. Bennet in her than Mrs. Bennet. But
yeah, definitely. So is there anybody else that you thought kind of got cast aside?
Oh, I feel like Lady Catherine's daughter got cast aside. Like, for someone, just because she is ill of health, it was like she just took all of these things that she could have shined with, and was just like, oh, she would have been great at that if she wasn't so sick.
She would have been good at the piano. She would have been,
and I'm like,
piano forte or whatever.
I'm like, why does that take away from her? Like, she could still be great at that. I wasn't.
And we don't even get a sense of what the illness is. Is it one of these rose gold situations where Lady Catherine's just keeping her inside all the time and controls her so much that she stays dependent or whatever? I mean, because
well, it gives Lady Catherine
to get into the sickness, but you know what I mean? I'm just like, well, she's right there on the sofa, she can't be that sick.
Right. And she looks like she's like they talk about how prim and proper she looks and things. Like, she does look kind of sickly, but is that because everything is so controlled that she's not allowed? It reminds me of The Secret Garden. And
yes, I was just gonna say that, like, get her outside, get her outside,
like, make her garden. Like, I bet you if she went out
on a horse,
like, I feel like she would have been a lot, like, she would have been able to shine a lot more. But then part of me is like, Lady Catherine, maybe like Munchausen syndrome, like maybe she wanted to be the person to always be taking care of someone, and that's a talking point that she wanted to be able to have.
Right. So, or she just wanted her to marry somebody who would come into their abode, and then Lady Catherine could continue to be in charge of everything. And I get the control factor from Lady Catherine, but and she really does have some great one-liners in this book too.
Gosh, yeah.
And the fact that she can deal with Mr. Collins, she can't be all bad. She can deal with Mr. Collins. I mean, she deliberately gave that man a living.
She did.
Going to be preaching every week at their church.
Yeah, right. And she, oh my
His sermons must be 5 hours long. That's all I could say. I'd be like, I'm hungry.
I'm like, I'm done. I checked out like 4.5 hours ago, man. Yes. I've got to go to a fainting chair.
Right. It's time to swoon. This sermon's going on too long.
Yes, no.
But
And
that does bring up Charlotte,
I was
who
just about to say Charlotte.
yeah, I like Charlotte. I mean, to me, I get Charlotte. Charlotte's like, I don't have a lot of good opportunities here. I bet if I'm just kind of nice to this guy who everyone else is not being very nice to, I could set myself up in a good situation. And, I love the fact that she immediately goes into his house and totally rearranges everything and makes things her own. And,
Yes.
I think that if she has her space and he has his space, they'll be all right.
Yeah, I think that in the end, it was a good match. I do understand why Lizzie was like hurt by it, where she was like, that came out of nowhere. Like, you were perfectly, like, you didn't really like him either. Like, and then Lizzie says no to the proposal.
Right.
And then it's like, okay, other side of the coin. Oh, now he's engaged to Charlotte.
Right. I think Lizzie's feminist side was kind of like, you can't just take anybody. And Charlotte was kind of like, I have to. I mean, I don't, not all these women are as strong of opinion and mind and as brave as Lizzie is. Lizzie is brave. During this time period, she makes decisions that other women wouldn't make. And that's one of the reasons we love her so much is she follows her heart and her mind.
Yes.
So she has these very, set principles and she follows them. And Charlotte's like, I can't take the chance. This is probably going to be my best offer. And we feel sorry for her. But I can see why at that point, Lizzie's like, we don't jive anymore because I could never do that.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that they don't have a total falling out too, because they've been friends for so long.
Yeah, but I feel horrible for Lizzie for losing a friend, like losing the tightness of that friendship to almost an acquaintance kind of thing. Like she's not going on that deeper level that she was going with Charlotte. Now it's more pleasantries, and it's not that best friendship that they once had. So
untied.
I actually like Charlotte more in the retelling than I do in the original.
Yeah, let's move on to the retelling. We can talk about that because I think other things from the original will come up as I'm retying my bonnet. I just don't know. It's just too hot here. Even my bonnet won't stay tied.
Nope, it's like it's got to breathe. It's got to go.
Right. So the retelling is it's a little bit later in history than the original. So we're not in Regency England anymore. We are still in England.
Yes.
And we are looking, actually I looked up what I thought the exact date was, but I wasn't actually entirely sure when the time period was until there was mention of the Bow Street Runners. And I thought, oh, okay. So I know what time period we're dealing with here. We still have carriages and we still have a very formal system, a class system and style of dress, but it's not the Regency period any longer.
No, and it does make sense that there isn't a formal police as well during this time, which made it a little bit more believable, like how law was being, put to justice and different things like that, because that was something that I had to sort of
don't expect Sherlock Holmes to show up. You're not going to have an inspector. You're not going to have, and I love the use of the Bow Street Runners. I just like books that include them just because, these are, it's kind of like, they're not the beat cops. These are kind of another level of cop, and they're really kind of in tune with different classes of society. And I find that whole law enforcement period really interesting.
Yeah, I agree. And I love, like, I didn't know a lot about this because I've never really studied a lot of Europe's kind of way of doing things, especially like England and things like that. So like to know like the difference between like a barrister and a solicitor, and that was fun for me to learn about because I'm a history buff. And so I was like, oh, okay. And
so if you guys are also history fans and you like mysteries that are also chock full of historical fiction, this would be a good pick for you. And we're starting off, as Courtney said, we're set up with Mr. Bennett as having his own law firm. And, they're a small boutique law firm, I would say. And I love it's called Bennett and Sons, which is odd because there is no son, but that's cachet, that name, Bennett and Sons. And then of course we've got the Darcy firm, which is known, it was like if we were taking this as a John Grisham book, they would be the firm, they would be the big firm with hundreds of lawyers, and they would be on TV all the time, and there'd be 1-800 numbers, and they have a really good reputation. And then the Bennett's firm is kind of like a little bit smaller with 1 or 2 clerks.
Yes.
And Charlotte works at the Bennett's law firm, which I just love. And she is a person of color, a woman of color, which is super fun.
I loved the fact, that's one of the things, like, that's one of like the main Post-it notes I put while reading this was, I love the fact that Charlotte was half Indian and half Caucasian. I loved the fact that that she did that, and really sort of gave way as to why, like another reason as to why she might be flirting with Collins, because her parents have passed, she doesn't have a family to lean on, and she's a person of color. So the fact that Collins, someone who might get the firm one day, is giving her attention, it makes a lot more sense as to why she would
and
pursue
also
that avenue.
Yeah, it's more of her choice in this situation. It's not like she, in this case, it's kind of, first of all, she's extremely adept at her job. And it's nice how much attention Ms. Price pays to how intelligent Charlotte is and how organized she is. She's really the person who knows where everything is at the firm. And I love the intelligence that she's given it, instead of just being kind of this great organizational person or someone who'd be a great wife. She's wonderful at her job, and it is her choice. It is a more kind of feministic approach to marriage in this book, where she thinks, okay, this is a choice I'm making. I like my job, but I'm going to have a tough time possibly finding a good match in society. And she gets along with Collins from the beginning. So she's not the leftover choice. It's her choice. She decides, I'm going to pursue him, and I'm going to make it clear to him that he can ask me to marry him, and I'm going to say yes. And I like that so much more, because I like Charlotte's character in this book. It's really she's really well fleshed out.
She is, like, so much more so than in the original, which I really appreciated. The biggest difference between characters of the original and the retelling is Lizzie's character. I adore Lizzie's character in the original. I think she's she's just so classy, and she's just so warm, and just, I don't know. I really, really,
she's
really
funny, and she's sharp-witted, and she's also passionate. I mean, if it comes to her family, look out, because Lizzie, if you mess with her sisters, she's coming after you.
Exactly.
Verbally, but I love that.
This Lizzie, and I have to keep telling myself, this is a YA cozy mystery. This Lizzie was very much a teenager, and I had to constantly, like, set the book aside and be like, okay, there is a huge difference between 20-year-old Lizzie. I think Lizzie was 20 in the original. Was she 20 or 20?
I think she's older, actually.
Yeah, she's in her 20s though, versus 16-year-old Lizzie. And
I mean, early 20s. I mean, there's probably, 12, 13-year difference. And that, we all know there's a huge difference between who we are at 13
oh my goodness,
who we are at 23.
Yeah. And so I feel like, as a true to teenageness, Lizzie's very self-involved in this retelling, and pushes the feminist agenda almost too much, that is almost distracting from the mystery that's involved. Did you get that, or was that just
I felt like in a small way, Lizzie's intelligence was diminished by her impetuousness and her desire to get action done. So I totally understand, okay, let's create a Lizzie who's an action character and who's smart. She wants to work for the firm as a woman. I am 100% behind that. I love that. However that was going to work, I want that to work. But she was putting the real Lizzie, the original Lizzie would never put someone else's future or fate or safety in danger to further her own cause, no matter what that is, even if it's seeking justice for someone she believes is innocent. And that was kind of the thing that I had the hardest time with, is that she kind of used this servant and risked her situation, first of all, and then, I don't want to give any spoilers, but really put her at risk. And I kept saying to myself, Lizzie would never do that. But again, we were thinking of 21-year-old Lizzie or whatever, and not teenager Lizzie. Teenagers don't always have the kind of hindsight or ability to look around and think, what I do is going to cause a ripple effect. And the Lizzie in this book caused a lot of ripple effects, and some of which I really didn't care for.
Well, and what I do love, and what was redeemable about Lizzie's actions, is towards the end of the book, she admitted all of the mistakes that she made to Mr. Bennett. Because at the end, he's like, you are smart, you are this. I'm not going to give away too much, but she's like, but I messed up. She goes, I did this and this and this. And she did her laundry list of all the things that I was like, why are you doing that? You're risking all of these people and all of these things. But she owned up to it.
Because, we see character growth there. And honestly, that's what we're always looking for in our books, right? We don't want a character to start off on page 1 to be the same character on page 320. And this Lizzie isn't. She goes through a journey. It changes her. It matures her. I think it makes her a more deeply feeling human being. And I really appreciated that. I think that there was less growth with Darcy. We kind of like him from the get-go. The enemies to lovers trope wasn't as strong here, because I think, and I cannot blame Miss Price for this, because if you already have your Darcy love in there, it's kind of hard to write him as an unappealing, right away he walks in the room and it's, oh, he's attractive. And I thought, now you shouldn't be telling us that yet. He shouldn't be attractive until he acts attractive later on.
Yes.
But he is right from the get-go. And
she talks about his lips.
Like, oh, here's Darcy.
Like, you're like, I know, I know, but like, you're not supposed to be like, not this soon. We're supposed to still despise him. And so I liked that aspect, like, but I feel like I could have had a little bit more grr and hatred between Lizzie and Darcy for a little bit longer.
A little more tension.
Yes, I needed the tension to really seal in at the end of of it and what happened. I really liked that. One of the things that I'm not quite sure that I feel about when it comes to relationships is like the Wickham, Lady Catherine, and Collins relationship.
Yeah, it was like all of the possible villains or characters that people didn't like so much from the original, the less savory characters, were all thrown together in the, all right, I'm going to increase everything that was negative about their characters. And unfortunately, it makes them less, it gives them less depth. I mean, a great villain is a villain who has some goodness.
Some redeemable qualities that you're like, okay, I can totally understand where he or she is coming from. Like, you almost sympathize with them, and yet you still kind of hate them. I don't know. It was a lot all at once, like how Collins was integrated with Lady Catherine, then with how Wickham was integrated with Lady Catherine. I thought that was almost a stretch.
Right. I don't think Wickham in either book would ever allow himself to be used by anyone.
No.
I mean, he's not a pawn type character. He is somebody who manipulates situations. He's a manipulator.
Yeah.
That's kind of who he is. And the fact that was turned around on him, again, it has a cool feminist slant,
Yes.
Lady
Yes.
Catherine was like, oh, you think you're going to be messing with women in this book? Well, I'll show you. And that was fun.
That was very
Um,
fun.
I thought that her kind of being this lady pirate type was a bit of a
Yes.
stretch considering that her class,
That,
you
yeah, I was
know,
like, because like original Lady Catherine would not in any way, shape, or form be a pirate.
right.
Like I'm just
But
trying to like,
the
picture her.
scene, and I'm not going to spoil this for anybody, this scene at the end at the docks was
Yes.
fantastic,
Oh my goodness, yes.
action packed. I really saw that kind of on the screen.
I did. Like I was seeing like the horse chase scene in the carriage, and like I was like,
and the jumping in the water and the rescues and then this, and we're not going to give any specifics,
yeah.
but you'll read the last 30 pages and you just won't, nobody
Nope.
can talk to you because you
You're
have
just
to get this
continually
done.
flipping. I couldn't agree more. I really liked that a lot. So so Jane and Bingley were really prominent in the original, whereas in this retelling you barely get any of them at all, and they only like it's like they tease just meat. I don't
Yeah,
know.
Jane really just kind of disappears, and Bingley is completely overshadowed by his super obnoxious sister. I mean, every scene she appears in is just, it's hard to take her because
Mhm.
she's so rude and obnoxious.
And she was rude and like very condescending to Lizzie in the original, but like
Right.
this took it to a totally different level.
Right. And it was kind of fun because again, if you think about high schoolers and kind of cliquey behavior and mean
Mhm.
girl, this was almost kind of like, wow, we've got a mean girl here because she wants Darcy for herself.
Mhm.
And once I kind of looked at it like that, I kind of enjoyed seeing her not make any progress with him.
Yes. Darcy
So
was
that
like
was fun.
not even looking, didn't even what wasn't even like,
Right. Because
yeah.
whenever you come across a female character who is willing to throw another female character under the bus, I am perfectly ready for bad things to happen to them. I mean,
Mhm.
they don't need to get killed or anything, but I don't want them to get the guy in
Nope.
the end. I mean,
Nope.
you have to be the kind of woman who lifts up other women, supports
Yes.
other women. That's one of the things we all love so much about Jane and Lizzie's relationship is how much they hold each other up. And yes, they're family, but I think even if they weren't, they both have the kind of personalities where they would support each other.
Yes.
And so I just, Caroline is a really tough character to take because she would destroy anyone's happiness to try to forge her own. And we all know that doesn't work.
No, and I love, so my sister and I are very close. We have weekly sister nights. Like, I mean, every single week I see my little sister, and
That's awesome.
so I loved Jane and Lizzie's relationship because I could really see Amy and I in that. And I think that's another reason why I loved Darcy so much is his love and protectiveness of Georgiana.
Yes.
I teared up when I was reading what Wickham tried to do to her. And the way that Darcy was perfectly fine, like messing up his reputation, messing up what others thought about him in order to protect Georgiana. And he did it in both the retelling and the original. And I loved Georgiana's character more in the retelling than I did in the
Me
original.
too. I would love to see a series where she was the main character. I think a
Yes.
Georgiana Darcy series would be so much fun, almost like an Anne of Green Gables, but we're looking at a Georgiana and watching her grow and get married and have kids. I think that would be so much fun. And then to see her interacting with Darcy and Lizzie's kids. We can just have all these fantasy novels come
I
out of
agree.
the discussion. Like somebody needs to start writing this. But you're right. I loved his, I mean, he is really loyal to his family too. And I think that I love that he did all this stuff behind the scenes and didn't want credit for it. That's what makes a true gentleman.
I just got chills. Like,
yeah.
It's just,
And could you imagine being Lizzie and you have rejected the worst marriage proposal in the history of mankind? No doubt.
Yes.
like, I didn't like you at the beginning. And I didn't think your family. Oh, believe me. I mean, come on, Darcy. And I love that. I love because that's two of my favorite tropes in one book. The original Pride and Prejudice has my enemies to lovers and second chance.
Yes.
You can't ask for more. This is why it
So
lasts.
good.
This stands the test of time because everybody loves both of those tropes. Well, okay, not everybody, but
okay, but
you
I'm a
should.
huge proponent of it. I love it. I love it. And I think that's why I was so shocked at how much I loved this book. Like I was talking about it to coworkers and I was talking about it to friends and I was like, and then this happened and this happened, because this is my first time really reading classics and I'm so into it. And it was like a novella show was just going in my head, and it was so much fun to dive deeper into
so
it.
now, guys, Courtney has to watch. She has not seen any of the film versions, and of course, those of you who have seen the films, we know that there is a huge fight out there about who is the best Darcy.
Okay.
You've got Colin Firth. I think he's probably the reigning champ. You've got Jeremy Northam. I forgot there's a third. And then who is the best Lizzie? So I don't know. She may have to binge watch like 4 or 5 different Pride and Prejudice like in one weekend, then come back to us with her favorite Darcy. But we would love to know who your favorite Darcy and Lizzie's are out there.
Yes.
And put your vote through for which film she should start off first, because you think that nothing else can hold a candle to it. I'm going to go for the Colin Firth because I love the young woman who played Lizzie. And actually, I just saw her again in Monster, the Netflix series. She plays an American lawyer. And I was just like, wait, that's Lizzie. Oh my gosh. And she was great in that too.
So if you had to like do a new movie adaptation of Pride and Prejudice, who would you have Darcy be?
That would be really, really, really hard. I think I'd have to ponder that for a little while. One of the things I love about the Bridgerton series is the incorporation of that show of just you just see so many different colors of people in that show. And it was so much fun to watch that. I would love to see any Jane Austen remade like that. And I believe that Persuasion is going to be remade. And I saw the possible casting for the leads for that. And I'm so excited. I'm not going to say anything, but if you guys Google Persuasion series, or because Persuasion has never been made well as a film. It is, and that's my favorite Austen book. And the fact that there isn't a good version of that on screen has always made me sad. So I've been dying for that to be remade, and I think we're going to see it this year.
That would be fantastic. I love how Lin-Manuel Miranda has sort of broken that glass ceiling when it comes to casting people of color or of LGBTQIA, like just being able to give them roles that they're going to be fantastic in.
Hamilton just blew it out of the water.
It was so good, and I really think that he's the pinnacle of like why we're able to see so many of those amazing actors and actresses be able to go for roles that they would not have been able to go for otherwise. I love that so much.
I think that Pride and Premeditation would work really well as a miniseries.
Yes.
Like that, with just a really diverse cast. And I mean, I actually think that would enrich it and make it a fascinating miniseries.
So I have a question. So normally at the end of a cozy mystery, you can tell that it's going to be a series and it's going to continue with those characters. I felt like this should be a series. Like it still follows Lizzie and Darcy, but of the research I've been able to do, Miss Price is going to continue to do the next book that she's doing is Sense and Sensibility, and it's going to be called Sense and Second Degree Murder. So she's continuing with Jane Austen, but not the characters.
Not these characters.
And
Okay.
I feel like part of that's really cool, but then the other part of me is like, the first book in a cozy is always the hardest to get into because you're building the world and you're building the characters. And then the second book is almost always better because you already have the background knowledge, you already understand the characters, and now you can really dive deeper into their depth and things like that. So I don't know how I feel about her going, because then she's also going to do Mansfield Park, and she's calling it Manslaughter Park.
I love that.
And so,
but I think, the assumption there also is that your readers are familiar with the original there. I'm not sure how I would feel about Pride and Premeditation had I not been familiar with the characters from the classic.
I agree.
And so I think it's going to take a little bit more work on the reader's part to be ready for the subsequent books in the series. But I could see why it would be more exciting for her to write these fresh places and fresh faces every time. And difficult though, because she really has to know the characters from those classics very well. I mean, it takes an incredible amount of research and, an incredible amount of work on her part to go from, different book to different book. So kudos to her for going there.
Yeah. And if you guys want to read Pride and Premeditation, just so you know, she is part of the LGBTQIA, the author is. And like, I just saw her in her post about her wife getting her PhD and things like that. So if you want to read this for Pride Month, not just because it has Pride and Premeditation.
Right. You still have a few more days.
You do. You can totally go in and pick that up and mark it off as one of your ways to support the LGBTQ community. So I'm so excited. So we've decided that we're going to do this bi-monthly.
Oh, more outfits.
Yes, more outfits, more super excited. So what if we decided that we're going to read, because we're going to do the classic and a retelling. So do you want to tell them what we're going to read? I totally already bought them.
So we are thinking about doing Little Women next time.
Yes, Little Women. That's one of my mom's absolute favorite books and movies of all time. The one with she's a blonde actress. She plays the littlest sister. She was also in Interview with the Vampire. I don't remember her name.
Oh, Kirsten Dunst.
Kirsten Dunst. That was my mom's favorite movie adaptation. So we're going to be reading Little Women, and then you found a retelling called Meg Jo. So pretty exciting.
Yeah,
it looks awesome.
You guys want to get that read before, what is this? This is June. So we'll do that in August.
Yeah. So we'll talk about them in August, and there will be more things on our Instagram to tell you like the date, because we're thinking that we could actually do a live stream of it where you guys get to comment along and ask questions and different things like that, which I think it'll be a lot.
We'll probably do this as live stream from now on. This is kind of our initial one just to ease into it, but we're already thinking ahead to Jane Eyre in the fall because it's such great Gothic vibes, and it is one of my top 10 favorite books. And I'll have to stay calm because I just love that book so much. And we have a retelling in mind for that, where the main character is a Korean American.
Yes.
And I think that would be it. I think that'd be really fun. So, and if you would love to see us do, we'd love to know.
Yeah. So thank you so much for spending time with me today and talking about and dressing up.
And thank you for my necklace. Courtney gave me this.
So I would be welcome. Yeah.
Tired.
Yes. I love us. We're fantastic. All
right.
If
you join us on the live stream, we would absolutely encourage costumes. We may have to do prizes for people who come showing up with something. I mean, I love doing prizes and giveaways. So keep that in mind. If you want to come with a straw hat or a cute dress or a shawl for our Little Women, just,
Yes.
put that on your shopping list. And I think we'll do random prizes for random things. Why not?
I love that. Yeah. If you're not following her on Instagram, her Instagram is freaking fantastic. So go over there and follow her and message us, what your thoughts are and everything like that. But I think that we'll wrap this up, and I hope that you guys have an amazing day and happy reading.
Happy reading.
Yes.